there's a process that is taking place now in each and every one of the thousands of cells in your body. Yes, even as I speak. And it's a process that gives your cells energy and which gives your body energy to do the many activities that you do every day, including sitting in front of your computer screen. And that process that takes place in your cells is called respiration. Well, hello and welcome to our video series on the topic of respiration. Well, I hope you're energized for this topic. See, this topic can be divided into two parts. So in the first part, we'll be looking at cellular respiration, which takes place in your cells. And then in the next part, we'll be looking at the respiratory or the gas exchange system, which includes your lungs. Now, the first thing to be said is that people often confuse the respiratory system with cellular respiration. But they're not exactly the same thing. In fact, they're very different. So let's get the differences clear. So what is the difference between gas exchange and respiration? Well, this diagram here will hopefully help us see the difference. On this side, let's start with cellular respiration. So respiration is a chemical reaction that takes place inside our cells. And that tells us that it is something that occurs at the microscopic level. You can't really see respiration taking place with your own eyes. So what this chemical reaction is that cells take in glucose, and then the glucose is broken down inside the cells to release energy for the cell. This involves the mitochondria. Okay, so cellular respiration is something that takes place inside cells. It is microscopic. On the other hand, gas exchange, or what we call breathing, you might call that in your normal language, gas exchange is the movement of gases, the exchange of gases between the lungs and the environment. So it involves gases moving in and out of an organism. So that's breathing, right? It's the muscle contractions that are involved in moving gases in and out. You can actually see it happening. Alright, so this is breathing and this is cellular respiration. So it's important to get the difference clear. Sometimes people confuse it. They call breathing respiration. Okay, but breathing is not respiration. Okay, respiration is a microscopic chemical process. Now that we've got that difference out of the way and we've got it clear, let's take a closer look at cellular respiration. So in the rest of this video, we'll be covering what is respiration and what kinds of respiration are there. So let's begin with something that should look familiar to you, a boy and a burger. And if you haven't forgotten, the boy's name is Timmy, and Timmy wants to get energy out of this hamburger. What processes need to take place for that to happen? Now, hopefully you can remember from the topic on nutrition in humans that there are some processes that need to take place. And the first process is ingestion. So you need to eat the burger, then the burger needs to be broken down by digestion into nutrients that can be absorbed, and then the absorbed nutrients are used by the cells of the body through assimilation. Now, the next thing you need to remember is what is the nutrient that is used to produce energy? CPF. Which one is used to produce energy? Now, hopefully you recall that it is the carbohydrates that are used as the main energy source. So here's my body cell, and let's say it's got some glucose inside the cell, right? Some glucose. Now, here's the thing. Glucose, carbohydrates, right, by themselves, can't really do anything. They can just kind of float around in the cell. In order to release and unleash the energy within the carbohydrates, you need a process. And that process is respiration. So carbohydrates are actually broken down inside cells to produce energy through the process of respiration. You need respiration to release, to unlock, to unleash the energy which is stored inside carbohydrates. So here it is. Respiration is needed for obtaining energy. Right? In this case, we're referring to cellular respiration, which takes place inside your cells, is needed to obtain energy. And that's what gives energy to all these athletes. Here's schooling, here's Aerobic, right? And it's what gives them energy to do all the things that they do. Okay, without respiration, we'll just have nutrients sitting around in our cells. We'll just have glucose floating around in our cells. We need respiration to unleash, to unlock, to release the energy that is stored inside food molecules. So here's the definition of respiration. It is the breakdown of food molecules with a release of energy, right? Breakdown, so food is broken down and energy is released. Now, there are two types of respiration. There is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. And we're going to see what that each one of it means in just a while. Now, under anaerobic respiration, there's anaerobic respiration that takes place in human muscle. This is the important one for our syllabus. And there's also anaerobic respiration which takes place in yeast. This one we'll learn a bit, but it's kind of extra and not in our syllabus. Okay, so let's just dive straight in. Now, there are two types of respiration, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Both types of respiration take place in the cells of the human body. Now, for the rest of this chapter, we'll be looking at the specific example of human muscle cells. Now, respiration takes place in all the cells of the body. Alright, but we're going to look specifically at human muscle cells. So both aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration takes place in human muscle cells. What decides whether it's aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration is the conditions. So what do I mean? Now, under normal conditions, when human muscle cells have enough oxygen, sufficient oxygen supply, they are able to combine oxygen with glucose to form carbon dioxide and water and release a large amount of energy. Large amount. So aerobic respiration is the preferred way of producing energy. This is preferred. As long as there's enough oxygen present, I can carry out aerobic respiration to release a large amount of energy, right? More is better. Now for your syllabus, you need to also know the chemical equation for this, okay, not just the word equation. So I'm just going to write it out for you. Okay, and then you need to balance the equation. So I'm just going to balance it quickly. Right? So that's aerobic respiration. A large amount of energy when oxygen is present. Now, however, sometimes your muscle cells are not able to get enough oxygen. Maybe you're not breathing enough, or maybe the activity is too intense and the oxygen supply cannot keep up with the energy demands. So sometimes there's not enough oxygen given to the muscle cells. Then the muscle cells can switch to carry out anaerobic respiration. Now in anaerobic respiration, glucose is just converted to lactic acid to release a small amount of energy. Now notice there's no oxygen involved here. Right? So this is when oxygen is in short supply. There's not enough oxygen. Then glucose will just be converted to lactic acid to produce a small amount of energy. So that's anaerobic respiration. So you need to know these word equations well, and you need to also be able to compare their similarities and differences. So at this point, I would like you to read your textbook. Alright, open up to these pages, and I want you to complete the table in your notes. There's a table there on the similarities and differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration in human muscle cells. Alright, so just complete that table, and we'll come back to class to discuss it. Now before I end this video, I just wanted to leave you with a question. Maybe to help you to start applying the concept of aerobic and anaerobic respiration. And the question has to do with running. I'm not sure how many of you like to run, 2.4 km. Yeah. Alright, and there are people out there who run, and they really run competitively. There's this event in the Olympics called the 21 kilometer half marathon, and then there's another event called the 100-meter sprint. I remember when I went for my 100-meter sprint when I was in Sec 1 or 2, and I was first from the back. But anyway, the question is, can you hold your breath and run a 21 km half marathon? Can you hold your breath and run a 100-meter sprint? So what do you think? And why? Well, if you're a human being, a decent human being, right, who's normal, not Superman, then you would probably tell me that you can't hold your breath to run a 21 km half marathon. It's just far too long. 21 kilometers without breathing. Are you crazy? But if you try it really hard, you might be able to hold your breath to run a 100-meter sprint. Next time you don't believe me, hold your breath and try to run and sprint a short distance. Now, in fact, that's what some of these 100-meter competitive sprinters do. They hold their breath and they just run the course. Now, this is an interesting observation because it tells us that in the 100-meter sprint, right, when this person is holding his breath, there is no oxygen, no additional oxygen going into his lungs, right? So how are his muscles producing the energy for the sprint? Well, they are probably relying mainly on anaerobic respiration, right? Without oxygen. They are producing energy without oxygen, mainly, because he's holding his breath and there's no oxygen coming into his body. Whereas for the 21 km half marathoner, right, he's probably relying mostly on aerobic respiration, right? So there's kind of a nice constant supply of oxygen moving in and out of his, and carbon dioxide moving out of his body, a nice constant breathing in of oxygen, breathing out of carbon dioxide. And that supplies the muscles with enough oxygen to keep carrying out aerobic respiration throughout the whole 21 km half marathon. Now, I'll discuss a bit more of this in class, but I think it's worth going to read a bit more about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, as well as how it relates to different kinds of competitive runs. Just an interesting thing, and it does come out quite a bit in the O level, so a good thing to go and look at. Alright, that's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one where we'll talk about the changes that take place in a runner, right, during his run.